Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Ruben. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning, Rafai. Thank you so much for the Czech chocolates.
Oh, I like that. You see the alliteration, the Czech chocolates. I like it.
The Czech chocolates.
So you've actually eaten yours, because I know Ayo was saying that she's going to keep hers as a memento.
So guess what? Yeah. When I eat one, I put the wrapper back in and just keep it like that.
It is quite beautiful to look at, isn't
save
it? All right, so let's take you around the world. We'll start in the Middle East. And Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he has been begging for forgiveness for not being able to bring home alive those 6 hostages whose bodies were found in Gaza on Saturday. As he delivered his remarks, protests continued across Israel, including outside the Prime Minister's residence. And those protests are aimed at forcing the government to secure a hostage release deal with Hamas. It's still something that continues to be an issue. Now, staying on the topic of this issue going on in the Middle East, meanwhile, the United Kingdom has suspended some arms sales to Israel, saying that there is a clear risk the equipment could be used to commit serious violations of international law. The UK's Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, said the UK will be suspending 30 out of 350 arms export licenses to Israel. The affected equipment includes parts for fighter jets, helicopters and drones. Lammy said the UK continues to support Israel's right to defend itself and that this did not amount to an arms embargo. However, Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant posted on X to say that he was deeply disheartened by the move, while Foreign Minister over in Israel, Katz, also says that it sent a very problematic message to Hamas and to Iran. Now, Western governments have been coming under growing pressure to halt arms sales to Israel over how it is choosing to wage war in the Middle East against Hamas, especially in the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the United States now, and the U.S. has seized Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's plane, the Justice Department announced on Monday. Now, a Homeland Security investigation led investigators to discover the plane in the Dominican Republic. Now, after the U.S. government seized the plane, it was then flown from the Dominican Republic to Florida on Monday, and that's according to a source. Now, Maduro was not on board this plane when it was seized, but the plane is the Venezuelan equivalent to Air Force One, so it is largely significant, and flight records show that it is a Dassault 900 plane. Now, the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland, alleged the plane was illegally purchased for $13 million through a shell company and then smuggled out of the United States for its use by the Venezuelan president and his cronies. He does say that the Department of Justice will continue to pursue those who violate their sanctions and export controls to prevent them from using American resources to undermine the national security of the United States. And finally, moving back to the African continent here in Nigeria, 10 people who took part in last month's protests across Nigeria have been charged with treason and other serious offences at the Federal High Court in the capital, Abuja. All of the accused have pleaded not guilty. The demonstrations, which were dubbed the 10 Days of Rage, were called in response to the extremely tough economic crises happening in Nigeria that many people are living through. They turned violent in some places as protesters clashed with security forces, leaving at least 7 people dead, according to police, though some human rights groups have put the death toll at closer to 23. There were also 700 arrests during these protests, and as well as the treason, the 10 who appeared in court on Monday were also charged with the destruction of public property and of injuring police officers. They're also accused of working with a British citizen to destabilize Nigeria by calling on the military to take over from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, according to the charge sheet. The 10 of them are accused of allegedly shouting out that Tinubu must go and that it's soldiers we want. Now, despite an appeal, the 10 accused should be bailed. They have been held for a month already, and the court has decided that they will remain on remand in custody. Amnesty International earlier has criticized the legal process, and have called it a sham. I'm not sure if many people would agree that the legal process that we're seeing in Nigeria is tantamount to a scam, to a sham rather. But I do think that in situations like this, where accusations of treason have been leveled against people, it is obviously by its very nature a very serious allegation. And so I can imagine that the judicial process wants to take it seriously too. So a lot of stories there on our World Brief. Please do let me know what you want to start with.
Let me start with that. You see, for a Democrat that fought against military tyranny, I'm sad all of this is happening under President Tinubu. So these protesters, as you're calling them, you're charging them for treason. And you're wondering what is really going on in this country. For protesting, right. I totally condemn, demolishing government property or, destruction of government property, which is wrong. But because they chanted words, when they were protesting against Jonathan, didn't they say Jonathan must go? Did we term that as treason? Because even the white man, the British man they're talking about, right. He said he knows nothing about this, that he'll be happy to go talk to the Nigerian authorities in the UK, that somebody had just mentioned his name, that all he owned was a bookshop where the NLC complex used to be. Right. So this high-handedness of quickly to be able to tag people and say, okay, this is treason and all of that, in a country where bandits are having fun on TikTok, showing you how much they've earned on TikTok. Those are the real people that you should go after.
Focusing on.
Not people that are protesting because of hunger. So and that's why you see international agencies like Amnesty International is calling this definitely a sham.
A sham trial.
Because we've had many things in our legal system that has been below par. Is it not in the same country that a judge was openly going to defend her judgments in the public? What has this country become? We need to be careful. We cannot demonize people. They have a right of protest as enshrined in the Constitution. Do we go against destruction?
The calls for soldiers, do you think that is what has constituted the severity of these?
I mean, I don't even know what they're saying is constitution, but when they were protesting against Jonathan, they said Jonathan must go. They carried his own coffin. They did worse. Nobody spoke against them. For me,
yes,
Benjamin Netanyahu, in fact, let me call it his full original name, Bibi Melezowski, please keep your hypocritical tears. You are not sorry. You felt you were God, and now your own stance has hurt those people.
They were trying to protect
and they have been killed now. And I'll tell you quick historical, so please, I need to be able to just get this out of my mind, because it hurts me particularly. He should know better. His brother was killed in Operation Entebbe in '76, where they were trying to save people that were kidnapped. So if he has been through the pain of losing his own brother in an operation like that, shouldn't he know better to forestall this occurrence in the first place?
I would.
All right, very quickly, still on Israel, I was going to say that the best apology that perhaps the Israeli people, particularly those who are out protesting, would be for him to reach a deal. That's the best apology. It's not just by saying, it was a very sad situation play out with the funeral of the 6 hostages, and that alongside the announcement by the UK on the same day that they were going to stop. But they said they were clear on the fact that they were still stood in strong support of Israel's rights to defend itself, right. But that the arms that they were going to stop sending over to Israel are offensive arms. They said, John Healey, who is defense minister, has said that he wouldn't make a lot of dent in the war. It was just them being able to position that they were not taking sides in this matter, and they wanted there to be some form of deal at some point. So maybe this unfortunate killings of the 6 hostages would be a wake-up call for PM Benjamin Netanyahu on that front. A number of times they've come to the table, but I must also mention that he's not the only one who should come to a deal. The other side, Hamas as well, has also been called in. Iran and a few other sympathizers as well should put pressure on both sides to come at an agreement, because people who are being hurt the most are the Israeli people. A number of people are saying that rather than using military aggression to try to rescue the other over 90 hostages still accounted for, their families are worried that they're going to have the same fate or meet the same fate as the 6 others. That the best way to get them back in good condition is through a deal, a ceasefire, and that's what the Israeli people are pushing for with the with the protest. And they're saying that they're actually, the police and security agencies are actually quite hard in some instances on these protesters. Yes. So let's pray, hope for peace in the Middle East.
The same Benjamin Netanyahu that you are reporting is begging for forgiveness has said he's not going to succumb to pressure, and that Israel is committed to total victory in this war against Hamas. And he uses the word, "No one can preach to me." So Netanyahu is not likely to change. It's not as if there's any serious contrition coming from him. But the most significant development in the last 24 hours is the decision of the Labour Party in England to cut military supplies to Israel, reducing 30 out of the 350 contracts. Now, the significance of that is as follows. UK provides just about 0.02% of military hardware to Israel. So it's not going to have much effect in military terms. The effect it will have is that of an ally engaging in what looks like a severe criticism of Israel. And what is that criticism? It's out of the fear that Israel could use those arms and ammunition to violate international humanitarian law. Now, is the UK coming to the table in that regard early enough? I think it's too little, too late. And it also shows some kind of difference between the UK and the US.
Right.
The US says, no, they are fully committed to Israel. Even Kamala Harris has just said recently that their support for Israel is unequivocal. Now, Labour Party is divided. The Labour wing that supports Israel is saying, no, this is not fair enough. The Labour Muslim Network, that is another group, is saying that, in fact, there should be an outright ban. So that is the situation in that particular story. As for Venezuela and the U.S., there's no love lost between Venezuela and the U.S. No. The American government has placed a bounty since of about $20 million on the head of Nicolas Maduro. They had oil and gas sanctions against Venezuela, the economic collapse, and then don't forget the recent elections, where Gonzalez claimed that he won, and Nicolas Maduro said he won, and America was supporting the opposition party. Right. So all of this is within that context. Over 7.7 million people have fled Venezuela as a result of food shortages, high inflation. Venezuela used to have the highest inflation until Argentina, overtook it. So that's this geopolitics of it. Of course, there's also the ideological dimension. America not wanting left-wing politics at its backyard.
All righty, well, thank you for all of your comments. Let's move on now to newspaper headlines across the globe, and we begin in Nigeria with This Day newspaper. This Day is reporting and looking at the commencement of production of petrol for the first time in the last 28 years. This Day learns yesterday that 650,000 barrels per day at the Dangote Refinery located here in Lagos has concluded the test production of petroleum and will begin sale immediately. We do have a team, I believe, on ground waiting to bring us more updates. And we do know that this will bring much needed relief to Nigerians who are currently experiencing this petrol scarcity across the country. Something that has affected all of us, especially coming into the office today. And then looking at the certifiability of this situation with oil in the country, we do know that Nigeria continues to spend billions of dollars on turnaround maintenance of its 4 official refineries for over 20 years, and Nigeria has as yet been unable to get them to work. Let's move on now to the New Telegraph. And the New Telegraph is reporting today on the environment, and it says that flooding may well get worse in the coming days. Now, weeks of flooding has killed nearly 200 people in Nigeria and washed away homes, farmlands, and the country's disaster management agency has said that further flooding is threatening food supplies, especially in areas in the north of the country. These have been blamed on poor infrastructure and badly maintained dams in the country. Moving on to the Daily Trust. The Daily Trust is reporting on security agencies confirming an attack yesterday in Yobe, but could not give details on the attack nor confirm the casualty figures as yet. Sources have told the Daily Trust that the insurgents attacked the village around 4 p.m. when residents were returning from their farms. Last month, as we know, 2 people were killed and 475 households displaced by an attack by Boko Haram, which affected more than 2,390 people across 4 communities in the Mafa ward. Looking at The Punch now, The Punch is leading with more political news today. PDP governors and Nyesom Wike may well clash as the NWC meets on Wednesday. I listened to your very interesting interview yesterday talking about this. A governor, as we know, in Rivers State has been partially affected for months due to this ongoing conflict between Nyesom Wike and Governor Sim Fubara, both of whom are PDP members. And then if we move on now to the front page of the Vanguard is reporting on anxiety being raised as the pump price of petrol races towards 1,405 naira per litre. Nigeria's downstream petroleum industry may have gone into a frenzy following clear indications that the federal government may no longer sustain the cost of under-recovery, otherwise known as our subsidy. This is something that we've been talking about for weeks and weeks, and it's something we cannot avoid. We'll take a few African newspapers now. The Citizen of South Africa is leading with the Banking Association of South Africa, hitting back at the Minister of Human Settlements, Mamaloko Kubayi, after she accused banks in South Africa last week of racial profiling when considering home loan applications. She pointed out that half of the applications from previously advantaged persons were approved. She also added that she'd like to see hefty penalties for banks that fail to disclose the reasons for declining home loans. And just lastly, we'll take two international papers. The Daily Express is reporting that Kemi Badenoch, firstly, who has launched her formal bid to become leader of the Conservative Party, she says that Tories need to stop acting like Labour and has blamed the loss of voter support on politicians talking right but governing left, which is something that we talked about. You talked about the erosion of the middle stance yesterday, Dr. Rubin. And then lastly, The Guardian UK is taking a look at calls to ban the companies which were criticised in the Grenfell Tower inquiry. They have been facing calls to be banned from public contracts after it emerged that £250 million in deals have been made with corporations involved in the high-rises refurbishment in the past 5 years. So clearly, we're seeing that they do not want the same companies who have contributed or been able to benefit from Grenfell to be able to continue to do so. Those are the newspapers I have for you. And we know we have a stacked show, and that's what we have.